All right, hey everybody, welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining, my name is Shane. This is my landscape photography channel. I've got some fun stuff for you today. In today's video, we're going to cover the new Lightroom masking features. And let me tell you, these are awesome. It's almost like they put Photoshop inside of Lightroom. Not quite, but pretty darn close. If you haven't seen these new features, man, you're going to love them. We're going to jump right in. Hey, all right, before we get started, I just want to mention we're going to cover multiple subjects about this new masking tool. You should see little paragraphs or little sections down at the bottom of the video. So if there's one subject you're not interested in and we start talking about that, you can just jump from paragraph to paragraph from different pieces of the video to different pieces of the video. So it will have different chapters, not paragraphs. There'll be different. I'm writing a book here. There'll be different chapters of the video. You can click on each one to jump around. So in Lightroom just came out, the latest update. If you haven't heard about it, it changed up the masking system a great deal. So we're going to cover those features in this video. We're going to cover the artificial intelligence selection of your subject. We're going to cover the artificial intelligence selection of the sky. We're going to cover the subject of inverting your selections. We're going to cover the subject of intersecting your selections. And we're going to talk about the new changes to luminance and to color mask. So if you haven't heard about any of those, we're going to get started. We're going to go over each one of those. We're going to have a chapter for each one of them. I also should mention that the way you mask things, the way you look at a mask overlay inside the masking tool, it's changed a little bit too. Pretty neat. So we're going to show you that also. Let's go ahead and get started. So on my desktop, I've got a picture of my daughter here. So this is a picture we took in New Mexico not too long ago, trying to get the fall colors. But here's a picture of my daughter. The first thing I want to show you is I want to show you the artificial selection of a subject. And then I want to show you, once it selects it, how can you change the overlay colors and how the overlay looks? How do you know what you've got selected is correct? If you look at the right side of Lightroom here, you'll see there's new icons here at the top. It looks a little bit different. So we've got the cropping icon, we've got the clone or healing icon, we've got your red eye correction icon, and we have this little circle. This is your new mapping tool. So I'm going to click on that mapping tool, and I already had it clicked. So now that's clicked, you can actually see add new mask. Now here's your new masking system. So you've got select subject, select sky, you've got your brush, your linear gradient, your radial gradient. And this is new. Color range and luminance have been moved up to this level. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Let's go ahead and select the subject, see how well that does. So I'm going to click on add new mask. I'm going to click on select subject. Now when we do this, it's going to be thinking, it's going to be trying to detect that subject, see how well it does. And boom, now I found my daughter. It did a very good job finding my daughter. That is awesome. I really like that. So you'll see here on this panel popped up. So we have a create new mask panel. It shows the mask that it just created, right? This is the subject selection that the artificial intelligence just made. So this is the actual mask. Now if you look real close, you can see I can actually show the overlay or hide the overlay. And if I don't like the way this overlay looks, if it's hard for me to see, I can actually go and change the color of it. So you can choose different colors. You can actually choose the opacity of the overlay. You can change how that looks, right? I like to have mine kind of way up so I can see it really well. And I actually like that color. So I'm going to leave it there. Now there's new pieces here I don't believe were before. If I click on these dots right here, you'll see that I have color overlay on black and white. So basically my item that's selected is got the color, and everything else is in black and white. You'll see that there is an image on black and white. So now everything that's selected is in the colored part in the image, and everything else is black and white. There's no color overlay. And then I have image on black. So now everything that's selected is I can see, and everything else is just black. And next, if you go, there's an image on white. So same thing, everything that's selected is visible, and everything else is white. And the next one is white on black. Now this one is very much like the masking system in Photoshop. So everything that's white is selected, everything behind it is black. So pretty neat. Now this is really cool if you want to like zoom in and see the edges and see what else you got. Sometimes you can find stuff that you didn't mean to select um, by looking real closely and all that good stuff, right? So like this is her hair, that's okay, right? But you can see how well it found her here. It looks like it did a really good job. So a little bit of stuff is selected here. That's between her pants legs, right? So that's not quite, that kind of messed up a little bit there, but we can fix that easily by doing subtraction. All right, let's zoom it back out. And I'm going to change it to back to the color overlay. All right, so you now have all of these different ways of looking at what you've selected. Pretty neat stuff. So again, this was the artificial intelligence selection of my subject. Did a really good job finding it. If I had to do that in Photoshop, man, that probably would have taken me forever. So very quick, very neat. Let's see. So I've got the overlay on right here. I can turn it off by clicking on this checkbox, but I don't have to do that. You can if you want to. All you have to do is just start making changes. So I'm going to go over and up to shadows. So notice my overlay went away a little bit. I'm going to up to whites. I'm going to go ahead and up the clarity a little bit. And let's add a little exposure to it. There we go. Right there. Okay, so there we go. So you'll notice that if I go over to the mask here, you're going to see a little eye icon next to the mask. And that's your on off for that given mask. I'm going to turn it off. So there it is off. There it is on. Off. On. And you'll notice the backgrounds are not changing. Pretty neat. Now that's pretty awesome. So that is pretty cool. Again, just selecting artificially my subject. I have the different masks to play with to see what I've selected. Really neat. That in itself is a great improvement. Let's look at another one. I'm going to go back and, well, since I've already got this open, I can just go up to the plus. I'm going to click on the plus, and I'm going to choose the subject again. All right, so looking for the subject. Come on, find it again. There we go. So it found my subject again. Well, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to find my subject? I already had a mask that already had my subject selected. Why would I want to do that again? Well, let's look at this little feature. So I'm going to go down. Here's my mask 2. Here's my subject, right? I'm going to go to this dotted line here, and I'm going to choose invert. So boom. Now I've selected my background. So that's how you use invert. So anytime you select something, whether it's through auto selection AI with do your subject or sky, if you do invert, boom, it'll get everything else outside of what you selected. So that's pretty neat. So now I have a selection of my background. I can go over here and start changing it up. I'm going to up the shadows a little bit, maybe up its exposure a little bit, up its clarity a little bit, maybe up to whites a little bit, up to contrast a little bit. There we go. So here's my background. Off, on, off, on. And here's my subject. Off, on, off, on. And now here's the finished product. So pretty good, not bad. Now you'll notice that if I go back, I can turn each one of these on or off, right, to see the different mask. I can also go over here and turn all of them on and off. Check it out. Before, after, before, after. Pretty neat. All right. So that's how you can change the different mask overlays. That's how you can do inverting a particular mask. And that's how you can actually select with the artificial intelligence to select your subject. Let's move on to the next photo. Now here is a photo I took in White Rock, New Mexico. This is White Rock Canyon, and this I believe is the Rio Grande River. So let's go ahead and try a new artificial intelligence selection of my sky. So again, we've got the we can go over and get the masking icon checked. We can go down to select sky. There we go. It's looking, it's thinking, and how well does it do? Boom. Okay, found my sky. That looks pretty darn close. All right, let's start adjusting. I'm going to up the whites. I'm going to down the exposure. I'm going to make the clarity way high. Make it pop a little bit. I may downgrade that exposure some more. Maybe get rid of some of the highlights. Not too much. I think that's good. I may add a little bit of, change the temperature, just add a little bit of color in the whites. A little bit of color in the thing that's blown out. So let's see. Before, after, before, after. So selected my sky. Really cool. That's very cool. Again, that's something that would have taken me a long time to do in Photoshop, at least for me. And we did it in like 3 seconds. Very cool. All right, let's look at another one. So I'm going to go back and choose my, I'm going to do plus, and I'm going to choose the sky again. So again, why would I do that? I already selected the sky. Well, I get to do invert again. So I'm going to choose to invert. And now I've got the landscape. So that's pretty cool. So I selected the sky, changed it, and now I can take the landscape and change it. I'm going to up the exposure some, not too much. Get it close to the sky. I'm going to add contrast. Up the shadow some. Up the whites a little bit. I don't want to get this too bright, too much brighter than my sky. There we go. So I've made some changes to that layer. If I click the on, off, off, on, off, on, pretty neat. So I was able to select the sky. I was able to select the sky again and invert it to select everything else. Pretty cool. Now I'm going to go to a radial gradient. So I'm going to go over here and choose to add another one, radial gradient. I'm going to put the radial gradient right here. And let's move it around some. Now, the radial gradient, you can make it larger like before. You can actually control the feathering by using this inner circle. So it's feathering more, feathering less. Pretty neat. Okay. I'm going to put that about right there. Okay. Now I'm going to make this a little bit dark. A little bit darker. I want to make this part of the picture look a little bit darker than back here. Add a little contrast to it. I think I'm going to expand this to be a little longer here. So a little bit darker than everything else. I may up the white some. Okay. Now, the changes I made here, what if I wanted to make them over here? Exact same changes. Well, we now have this add button. So I'm going to go add, and we're going to choose how I want to add it. I can do it with a brush. I can do it with a radial gradient. I'm going to do it with a radial gradient. So now I can add a new radial gradient, and it's going to basically create a new radial right there. That radial is going to take on the same properties that I put on the other radial. So I have a radial here. If I go here, there's that radio. If I go here, here's the other radio. You can move between the two, right? Now, both these radios are going to take on the same settings. So if you change one, it's going to change the other. Like if I increase the whites, it's changing both. So that's how you add. So you can basically start out with that mask, and then you can add more into that mask. Why would you want to do that? Well, you'd want to do that if you have multiple masks, you want to have the same settings, right? You want to use multiple ways of selecting different pieces of your photo and using the same settings. That's why you would use add. Now, when would you use subtract? Well, in this case, I selected the river, right? I probably could have selected these sections differently than a radio, but I did use a radio, and I'm realizing I don't want the river to be part of that. So I can use subtract. So I'm going to go here. So I'm using this mask, the same mask. I'm going to choose to subtract. And I'm going to use a brush to subtract. So I'm going to take this brush, and if you look over here, we have different sizes. We have your feather, we have your flow, density. That's good enough setting. I'm going to take it and I'm going to run it through here. Make it a little bigger. And I can remove from that mask. All right. So I've I created a mask. I added more to that mask, and I can even subtract from that mask. Pretty cool, pretty neat. All right, so let's look at it with the overlay off. So here's before, here's after, before, and after, small changes. So we've learned how to create a radial gradient mask. We learned how to add multiple masks into the same section, and we've learned how to subtract. So pretty easy stuff, pretty simple stuff. Next, I want to add another radial gradient. I want to show you how to do intersect. This is pretty cool. So I'm going to click on create new mask. You're going to choose radial gradient again, and I'm going to select the same section. Now I've selected this bottom part here, this area right in here. Now what I want to do is I want to change some of the whites in this area. Now if I change it this way, it's going to change all the whites. I don't really want to change all the whites, but I do want to change some of the whites in this radial gradient. So how would I do that? Well, that's where your intersect comes in. So now I can go up to this mask, and I can choose to go down here and choose Intersect Mask with, and I can choose how to intersect with different, and I can intersect using the different options again. I can use brush, linear gradient, radial gradient. I'm going to choose luminance range. All right, so I've chose the luminance range. Now you'll notice now there is this section over here that shows luminance range. Now I can choose what luminance I want to intersect. So I'm going to turn back on the overlay, and I'm going to start changing. So what it's doing is it's choosing a luminance value only within that radial gradient. So basically, if you're adding two maps to the same section, well, those just kind of add upon each other. They don't take away from each other. With intersect, you're basically saying, okay, here's my first mask. I want to cover this area. And then intersect, I want to cover that area, but only certain pieces in that area using this other mask. So you're kind of combining the two masks to limit it down to something else instead of adding more and more and more. Hopefully that makes sense. I've got a radial gradient. You can see it, that entire area, and now I'm doing an intersect on luminance, and I'm trying to narrow it down to certain luminance. Now you'll notice I can actually move this more and more to the left and right to choose a different luminance. And there's also this arrow right here. Now this is kind of like your feathering. So you can kind of feather it off, make it spread out. Right? It's kind of like feathering. So I'm going to put it about right there. Okay, so I've chosen my little area here. It's a luminance mask intersecting a gradient, radial gradient mask. I'm going to start up in the whites, and I'm going to up the clarity a little bit too. All right, so let's see how it looks. Let's turn this mask off. All right, so I've got before, after, before, and after. Pretty neat stuff. Pretty neat. Very cool stuff. Now you'll notice I've got these masks 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, what if I want to come back later and change something, right? After a while, it kind of gets hard to remember what you did where. But what I should have been doing is using the naming feature. So let's go ahead and look at that. So my first mask here, what was it? It was the sky. So let's name it. I go here, choose rename, and let's put in sky. All right. Next one was what? It was the land, right? I inverted the sky, and we basically got the land. So I'm going to call that the land, right? As you go through here, you can name each one of these to something that makes more sense to you, right? So it'll be easier to find later. So you can choose to rename them. Now, if you look at your options here, you have rename, and we talked about the intersect. You can actually duplicate a mask. You can hide a mask, which I believe is the same as turning it on or off. Let's see. Yeah, it's basically just turning it off. And we turn it back on. So we have rename, intersect, we have duplicate, we have invert, we have all those options. Now let's go. I can look again and see what changed what. Pretty neat. Choosing the on off. Can do the land, right? Do the sky, on off, and then we have the whole thing up here. Off, on, off, on. Pretty neat. So in this picture, we talked about having a mask and adding more mask to it. We talked about auto selecting your sky and even inverting that to select your land. Pretty neat stuff. We've talked about how you can invert or intersect. We talked about how you can intersect two masks together to kind of narrow it down to exactly what you want in a given area. The intersect is pretty neat. We've talked about how you can subtract, like we did with this river. How you can subtract a mask. Very neat. Let's move on to my next picture. So I'm going to move over to these aspen type trees in New Mexico. So I wanted to cover real quickly luminance and color. So we've gone over pretty much everything else here. This luminance and color range. Now, luminance and color probably isn't new to you. You probably heard of that before. You probably used it before. The difference is now it's a first-class citizen. So before you'd had to use a brush or linear or radial gradient, and then once you've chosen something with one of those, you'd kind of have to intersect it. You'd kind of have to use color or luminance in conjunction with that. Well, now you don't have to. Now you can choose luminance as a full first-class feature, right? I can now choose something based upon luminance, right? So I'm actually choosing all the highlights in my picture there. So I can have a mask that's only about luminance. Very, very cool. Now you've seen how luminance works. I'm going to clear that out. So I've added a mask, and one thing I haven't showed you is, well, what if I don't want that mask anymore? There's actually a delete option. So I can delete. Now, you've seen the luminance before. Just want to make sure you understood. It's actually a first-class citizen now. Let's look at the color. Again, didn't used to be a first-class citizen. You used to have to use it in conjunction with something else. Now you can use it by itself. So I'm going to go here. I've clicked on a color mask. It's added it up there. And now I'm going to choose color in my picture. I can do that by using something like this, right? Or I can just click somewhere in the section. Now, if I don't think it covered all of my color that I wanted it to, I can press Shift and click in multiple places and combine different colors. Like I can even go back here and choose the background. So I've chosen this color right here. Now, it's kind of hard for me to see exactly what I've selected in this particular picture, but just because of the way the background looks. So I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to go over here. I just wanted the trees. Did I just get the trees or not? Yeah, I did. I just got mainly the trees and the limbs. So pretty cool. Now watch this. So we have this color range over here. This is showing the color you chose. You can invert it, and just like we used invert before, you can choose everything opposite of what you selected. Right? That's pretty neat. Got your invert here also. But we can also do refine. So I can take this down and refine it just to a certain color type instead of it being so spread out to that range of that particular type of shade of color. I can kind of refine it down, right? So that's one way to just make it more precise. I'm going to leave it about right there. I'm going to switch it over to color overlay again. And I'm going to start changing it. So I kind of want to brighten these trees up. So I'm going to brighten them up. I'm going to add a bunch of whites in there. I'll up my shadows in there. I may even up the exposure a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to add a little bit of blacks in there. There we go. So let's look at it. So I did all of that just by color selection, a color mask. So let's do off and on. So off and on. I'm going to add more contrast. There we go. Off. So you notice the tree limbs are darker here. Now they're just a little bit brighter. Let's see how that looks full screen. Not bad. Not too bad. Brightens it up a little bit. Of course, that's a personal taste. Some people might like them darker, but I kind of like it being a little bit brighter. Off, on, I'm going to change the mask a little bit more. Maybe I'll add some of the shadows back. Off, on. There we go. So I was able to change the color of all of these trees, and only these trees, just by using color masking. The color masking. Again, what did it change? Let's see. It just changed the items in white. Very cool. Let me go ahead and rename this to trees. Very cool. All right, so hey, that's it. That's the new masking system in Lightroom. Showed you how you can auto select your subject, how you can use artificial intelligence to auto select your subject, how you can invert it to select everything but your subject. We've showed you how to auto select using artificial intelligence, auto select the sky, and we've showed you how to invert it to select everything but the sky to select the land. Those two features in itself, it's, in my mind, just awesome. Really love that. We've shown how you can create a mask and then you can add more to the mask using different selections, either radial gradient, linear gradient, any of those selections you can for creating masks you can use. We've showed you how to subtract from your mask. We've showed you how to intersect your mask. So you can use a mask to capture part of the screen, and then you can use another mask to intersect it and narrow it down to exactly what you need in that part of the screen. Intersecting and inverting, we've showed you how to add mask, delete mask. We've showed you how to rename the mask, and we've also showed you the new masking overlay system, which is pretty neat in itself. So these are all the new features of the Lightroom masking system. Tell me what you think. What do you think? I love it. If you haven't played with it yet, hey, get off this video and go play with it. You will like it, I guarantee you. If you have any questions that I haven't answered so far in this video, hey, leave me a message below and I will get back to you. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'd love to hear from you. I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, do me a favor and click that like button. And if you have anybody else that might enjoy this video, send a link to them so they can watch the video also. I really appreciate that. And if you would like to see more content like this, or you'd like to check out our other videos where we do landscape photography, click that subscribe button. That really helps us get the channel promoted, gets the channel out there. And I really appreciate that. It really does help us get the word out. And we want to do our best to help others learn as we learn. So I really, again, can't tell you how many times I appreciate that. Probably about 6 times now, but I do. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for subscribing or for liking if you enjoyed the video. I hope to see you again in our new videos. We're going to have a lot more upcoming. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great week. Bye.